lot of people think that the only place in Paris where you can't see the Eiffel Tower is when you're in the tower itself. Well, that's wrong, because if you had the energy and could be bothered, you could walk for about 200 miles through Paris and never see the Eiffel Tower once. Mind you, you wouldn't be seeing much of anything else either. I'm talking about down there. Originally, this underworld was dug out by the men who were building the city up there. You see, it was down here that they found the stone they needed to build the big houses, pave the roads, and bridge the River Seine. And they'd still be digging it out today, 250 years after they'd started, if they'd been more careful. But they got greedy. They took out too much stone. So the buildings they were constructing up there began to collapse into the spaces they'd left down here. That's it, said the city fathers. No more digging. Well, that raised the problem of what to do with all this space down here. Well, in 1786, they came up with an answer. Arrête. C'est ici l'empire de la mort. It means stop. This is the empire of the dead. After you. No? You see, all that building up there had created another problem. They needed more and more land, and who better to take it from than the dead? After all, they're not going to complain. But you can't just dig up the odd cemetery here and there unless you have a place to relocate the occupants. So they brought them here, starting with the cemetery called Des Innocents. They did it in the dead of night, moving the bones in funeral carts accompanied by priests singing the burial service. It took them over a year just to empty that one cemetery. That was in 1786. And it was just the beginning. There were other cemeteries. Saint Eustache, Saint Landry, Saint this and Saint that. Still, they kept coming. Finally, they said stop. They had to. There was no more room. There are 2.5 million Parisians up there. There are 6 million down here. It's beyond belief. Coming up, the Elephant Man and a museum of incredible toys.
Beyond Belief will return after this. Are you a Nick maniac? A fanatical follower of the First Kids Network? The ultimate Nick fan? Then for you, there's Nick Mania! Saturday, tune in to 2 hours of Salute Your Shorts. Sunday, it's another 2 hours of bunk raids, bug juice, and camp kissing. While you're watching, take the Nick Maniac Challenge! And find out if you're an UGG or the ultimate Unawanna Maniac. So, Nick Maniacs and Nick Maniac wannabes, for you, there's Nick Mania! Today, starting at 2/1 Central on Nick.
Scramble is the hot new game. Playing ball won't be the same. Your color comes up, you hit someone. If it doesn't, you gotta run.
Scramble! Hit someone, get a wristband. If they dodge or catch the ball, give them one of yours. First with 6 bands wins.
Scramble is the hot new game. Playing ball won't be the same. Scramble! Scramble! Yeah! Scramble! Scramble!
What do they think of Bubble Tape's new dispenser pack? Your barber calls you Tiger.
Hey, Tiger.
Gives everyone the same haircut. He says,
That new pack just doesn't cut it.
and Edna wears too much lipstick. Her house smells like mothballs. She has no teeth. She says,
I still can't chew bubble tape.
6 feet of Bubble Tape coming soon in a new dispenser pack. For you, not them.
You're watching Nickelodeon. Now back to Beyond Belief.
Oh, two can play this game. Ah, there, gotcha. How about that, huh? It's blinding, isn't it? This is solar energy in its simplest form. Around 2,000 years ago, Archimedes, a famous Greek mathematician and inventor, used solar energy as a very powerful weapon of war. The Greeks and Romans were doing battle with each other, and the Romans were winning. The Romans sent a fleet of warships to attack Archimedes in his hometown, Syracuse. Well, Archimedes wasn't the kind of guy to take this lying down, so he had his Greek soldiers polish up all their bronze shields, and then he stationed them on a cliff overlooking the harbor. As the Roman fleet sailed into view, Archimedes had his troops reflect the sun into their shields, zapping one ship at a time. Think about it. Over 2,000 separate beams of solar power focused on one small place, the side of a wooden ship. First a wisp of smoke, a flicker of flame, and then poof! By the time the sun went down that night, fire had wiped out half the Roman fleet. It's beyond belief. London Hospital in the 1800s. It was here that the surgeon Frederick Treves brought the man who turned out to be his most celebrated patient. This is it today, across the street from where the patient once appeared in a freak show. It's a butcher's shop now, but then it was a freak show. And the star attraction? Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man. This is a portrait of Frederick Treves. He admitted Joseph to the hospital. Merrick's name still exists in the record of admissions. At first, he was assigned to this room on the 5th floor, and later, because the stairs were too much for him, they moved him to a room on the ground floor, a room that faced across the square towards the place where he'd been on show as a freak. Here he is. He was a popular patient at the hospital, attracting many visitors, important people of the day. Among them, Princess Alexandra, patron of the hospital and later to become Queen of England. This is an exact model made of him late in his short life. When he was 14, he had a 9-inch growth removed from his mouth. It was because it vaguely resembled an elephant's trunk that he got his nickname, the Elephant Man. These are casts of his right arm and foot, together with his perfectly formed left hand. Though he'd captured the hearts of Londoners, he was forced to wear this mask when he walked around the hospital, so as not to frighten the other patients. This is his skeleton, preserved here to this day and rarely, if ever, seen by the public. It's proof of the terrible disease to the right side of his body from which he suffered.
I feel very protective about him, keeping the public away.
David Nunn, curator at the London Hospital.
It's a blessing and a curse. All the attention can be a bit of a nuisance, but it is a great specimen to keep. But he's also a splendid example of humanity, that he stood up to all these afflictions and hardly ever complained. He didn't complain of any pain or suffering.
Because of the huge weight of his head, Merrick could only sleep sitting up. But at the age of 27 and failing health, one night he laid down his head and died. Among the things he left behind are this model, which in spite of his deformity, he built out of matchsticks. And these lines of verse, written just before he died. Was I so tall could reach the pole or grasp the ocean with a span? I would be measured by the soul, the mind's the measure of the man. Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man. It's beyond belief. Say goodbye, folks. Goodbye to what? Well, to lions and tigers and elephants and... Well, I'm going to show you some of the birds and animals that just aren't going to be around for much longer unless we start taking a lot more care. That means you and me, the guy next door, all of us, we've all got to take more care. If we don't, then one day, who knows, we could be saying goodbye to each other. And not just the tamarins, or to give them their full name, lion tamarins. Cute, huh? Well, if they keep chopping down the trees in Brazil, they're not going to be cute much longer. They're going to be extinct. At the last count, there were around 400 of them left, and they were being threatened by the building of a dam. Only in places like here, the Jersey Zoo, are they thriving. Over 42 have been bred here. But I gotta tell you, when I first heard what their diet was, I had to wonder if maybe unhealthy eating was what was killing them. Listen to this. Hard-boiled eggs, cat food, yogurt, peanuts, insects, and pink mice? You feed me a diet like that, and say goodbye. Mr. Chop Hander. What does he do? He chops hands.
To the unbelievers in the audience, let your hand rest inside. Now prepare yourself while I summon up my mystical powers. 1, 2, 3.
This is Covent Garden in London, where among other things you can find the Museum of Automata, or to give it its official name, the Cabaret Mechanical Theater. Have your ticket validated and join the fun. I guess this could be somebody's idea of heaven. A bathtub full of spaghetti with tomato sauce coming out of one tap and Parmesan cheese out of the other, while somebody plays honky-tonk piano in the background. Correction, while nobody plays honky-tonk piano in the background. Somebody must be playing. Got it. Turn the handle and the music comes out. Wrong again. Just another example of the good stuff they've got here. Automata has been around since 2000 BC. First with the Egyptians, then with the Greeks, who wrote learned treatises about it. I mean, that's a long time. And right now, in this day of high-tech computer games, it's making a comeback. One of these items here could set you back more money than a half a dozen Super Nintendos. Hey, you want a drink? Nice face. There you go, buddy. Leonardo da Vinci made a mechanical lion for Louis XII of France. When Charles V of Italy developed religious mania and took himself off to a monastery, he took his automata mechanic with him, where he continued to make models similar to these. 500 years later, they still amaze us. No wonder, it's beyond belief. I'm here to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and whatever else I want to tell you. But first, here are some laws with which you should be familiar. In the Malagasy Indian tribes, it's against the law for a son to be taller than his father. If he is, it costs him either money or an ox. It's the smallest group of people in the world. In fact, there's a whole tribe of them right here on my desk. In Ottawa, Canada, there's an anti-noise law which prohibits the buzzing of bees. Oh, what is that? Oh, is that a bee? In Lexington, Kentucky, it's illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your pocket. Excuse me, but is that an ice cream cone in your pocket? I'm the law. You're in trouble with me. It's on the books. Next, an unbelievable artist and a guy who does a magic trick that's beyond belief.
Beyond Belief will return after this.
You better stay here. It's a pretty rough ride.
Yeah, right. My brother doesn't know what my Murray Flexor can do. The spring-loaded fork handles the tough stuff, no problem. And the oversized tubing is made for rugged riding. Yeah, he had no idea what my Murray Flexor could do. But he does now.
Hey, Flexor by Murray.
You've all heard this.
There will be less talking.
And this one.
Less phone time for you, young man.
Well, enough about less. Now it's time to get more. More sweet raisins from Kellogg's Raisin Bran. More raisins. More sweetness. More is cool.
Yeah.
More 2 scoops. Hear that, Mama? More! Now I can have more of the sweet raisins I love. So, you can have a bowl of Kellogg's Raisin Bran and get more sweet raisins.
Kellogg's Raisin Bran, now with more sweet raisins in this complete breakfast.
Now that's more like it.
See, let me see. I love video scavenger hunting. Let's roll. Spotted dog, twins, rock group, group headstand. Got it. Twins? Oh, I always see twins. And McDonald's. Oh. Spotted dog.
Hey, a rock group.
Works for me.
Red convertible.
I always see red convertible. At McDonald's. Hey, we're doing good.
I'm doing great. Look, twins.
Not anymore. I knew we'd find everything at McDonald's.
So why don't you say something?
You're watching Nickelodeon. Now back to Beyond Belief.
Oh, God, smash him. Ah, hello. When the opera Charles VI premiered in Paris in 1852, Maffiani was the star tenor. But just as he sang the words, "Oh, God, smash him," referring to the villain in the show, his eyes happened to catch a stagehand watching the show from the catwalk above. The stagehand instantly fell to his death. Imagine what kind of an opening night that was. Well, the next night, the nervous tenor was careful to fix his eyes on an empty box seat. But just as he sang, "Oh, God, smash him," a late arrival entered the box. Their eyes met, and disaster. The man swayed, clutched his chest, and toppled to his death. You can see why the opera was said to be cursed. But they tried it again anyway. By the third night, everyone was in a panic, but Maffiani was sure he had the solution. He was determined that throughout the whole aria, he would stare only at the floor. But as the fateful words were sung, a musician in the orchestra pit played a little bit off key, and Maffiani couldn't help himself. He glanced down, and the musician immediately collapsed and died of a heart attack. That opera has never been performed again. Oh, God, smash him. Oh, sorry. Are you okay? Oh, no. Oh, you're...
There are people who can draw well and people who can't draw at all. I suppose I come in the middle somewhere, sort of, you know what it is, even if it doesn't look like it type drawer. Well, young Stephen Wilcher is at the top of the pile. 17 years old, he's been drawing like this since he was 8. Show him a building, a monument, a statue, all three, and in 15 minutes he'll have it down on paper, accurate to the last square inch. Like right now, for instance, he set up shop in Trafalgar Square in London. That's where there's Nelson's Column and the National Gallery, a couple of churches, half a dozen statues, enough stuff to keep an entire art class busy for a whole semester. He'll be done in 35 minutes. So, he's a talented kid. What's the big deal? The big deal is that he's autistic. You know, autistic, like Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man. Except in Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman was an ace with remembering numbers, stuff like that. Well, Stephen's an ace with a pen or pencil, and preferably a pen. Why? Because he never needs to erase a single line. Concentration's no problem either, whatever the distraction. That's it then, a good 35 minutes work. It'd take most people 3 months with lessons in between.
In 1 year on, went to Chicago and Washington, and in November, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Arizona and Grand Canyon, Moscow and Leningrad, and to publish at Floating Cities. I've drawn the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco 3 times. And the last one is New York for the American Dream, the new book. My favorite building's an Empire State Building, built in 1931. And the first time I went to Chicago, I like it there. The tallest building is a Sears building. And went to Las Vegas.
Stephen was born in London. At the age of 3, he was diagnosed as autistic. He had no language and suffered from uncontrollable tantrums. He started drawing when he was 5, and by the time he was 8, his drawings were being entered in national competitions. Invariably, he won first prize. Like a lot of 17-year-olds, Stephen loves cars, especially vintage American autos. Stick him behind the wheel and he'll have himself a ball. But this is what he loves to do most. And this is what he does better than almost anyone else. It's beyond belief. This is Paul Daniels. He's English. This is his home. And right now, he's messing around in his backyard.
No, I'm not selling carpets. If you drop in on any magician anywhere in the world, you will find him rehearsing, practicing, thinking. And I'm thinking because this is a rehearsal of a new idea applied to an old illusion. I've got a plank on a couple of trestles. It's all a bit dodgy. I've got a piece of cloth, and that's what this is, another piece of cloth to make the board comfortable. You put that on the board, and then, Debbie, could you help me? Debbie's my wife, and she's used to funny afternoons in the garden. Now, you could get on there. That's the idea. And this, blowing all over the place, I'll just cover you up with that, and maybe this will work better now. Now you see that this trestle is in the way. So imagine you're light-headed, Debbie, and we can just, if we just lift you up like that, we can take this trestle out from under. And once it's out from under, we can just drop it off the back of the board there. No. Yes. Right, I've dropped that off the back of the board, and now, yo. Now that's the first part. It works because she's suspended. And, of course, she's suspended on this trestle. What you've got to do, just relax, that's what magicians do. And then you take this away from here like that as well. Good. So now you've got that there. Now, somewhere, I've got a hoop somewhere, over here. And what you do is you take the hoop like this, and you just take that over there. Now, this hoop is flexible, and if Debbie relaxes, she should be able to go through the hoop. I don't know whether she can. Go on, go through the hoop. Yeah. Now, if you can take her through the hoop, and the hoop over Debbie, and it's a flexible hoop, which can't have any joints, now that's impossible. Beyond belief, they say.
Embalming corpses began in ancient Egypt. It didn't catch on in Europe until centuries later. I think the landmark corpse was Mrs. Martin Van Butchel of Scotland in 1775. She specified in her will that her husband would inherit her fortune only if her body remained above ground. Mr. Butchel wasn't about to ignore that request. Why? Because his wife was very wealthy. So he had her embalmed. Once that was done, Mr. Van Butchel dressed his wife up very fashionably, put her on display in the family parlor, and held daily visiting hours for friends who wanted to view the corpse. You see, he wanted to keep his inheritance secure. Well, embalming quickly became a booming business. Some embalmers actually took their prize corpses out on tour to hustle up new customers. The corpses were put on display in